We're getting so technologically advanced. There we go. This meeting's being live streamed. Everybody prepare. We are live. Can you hang around just a couple minutes?
Sure.
Make sure I don't break anything. That would be great. All right. So Sarah, your beautiful face is currently being live streamed on YouTube. I'm going to change the view setting, maybe. All right. It switches back and forth between views. All right. Jeff, floor is yours.
Why, thank you, Mayor, and associated IT personnel that helped us get to where we're at today. So we'll go ahead. It is now 4:07. We'll start the June 6th meeting of the Strategic Planning Committee. Everybody is in attendance today. Certainly good to have everybody here. We have a couple of guests along with us. In the back, we're holding this meeting in council's ante room, or council's office, I guess is what the official word or is for this, so that we can use this technology. So for those of us, anybody that's logging in and watching live stream, that's why it looks a little bit different than it has been when we have been meeting in council chambers. So to get our meeting started, we'll take, do I hear a motion to approve the May 16th minutes from our May 16 meeting?
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Hellman. Dennis? I have a second. Second by Mr. Reno. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, all those in favor of approving the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Motion passes. The minutes are approved. Moving on to today's list of things to do, and just, it's been a while since we got together, since it's been almost all 3 weeks now. So our goal today is to really listen to the feedback that we're hoping to get from Miss Sarah from Planning Next, who's online with us. We sent to Sarah the approved goals and objectives, thank you, goals and objectives to Sarah for her review and a comment today. So with that, Sarah, I am going to turn it over to you.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate seeing you all, being back with you. It's been a while. Seems like you've been hard at work here, getting through the sort of framework elements here. So I think, we have they seen the full draft that we put? Okay, so we took, the approved vision and goals and objectives and kind of put them into the plan framework structure in this document. And in doing so, we thought that the sort of approach to getting this plan framework approved. And then I think the idea was to go into council committee groups to then work through the actual action agenda and pull that back into it as a process. Makes a lot of sense. I think that I understand some of the ordering of the goals. I think there was a reordering to kind of pull safe community up front. We did hear that a lot from community members. That was important to them. So that, that made some sense. I think from what I understand for sort of the ordering of it, I don't know, it doesn't have to mean a priority order. I don't know if that's what you all meant it to be when you think about the goals 1 through 7 and the order in which they appear in the plan. But I do know that we heard a lot of comments about the attractive place piece, that people really care about the attractiveness, the beautification, the how well kept Findlay is. They appreciate, I think, the downtown and want, that to be sort of extrapolated out throughout the community. So we heard a lot around that. And so I think that's still a very important goal from the public standpoint. And I don't know, I don't think it means anything that you pushed it into like, there may be an order or a flow. So I was kind of curious about the ordering of that and if that we had kind of had them ordered at least initially for what we thought public perception or public input was telling us. But I think I understand from looking at this, you're putting a lot of the more the well-run government and the caring government, some of those pieces up front, which makes a lot of sense. It is your strategic plan. And then going into business and then some of the more softer things like the attractiveness and then active community and towards the end. So I think that makes sense if that was your intention. But I think this, from our perspective, this is a good framework for then which you all to kind of dive in and start to look at the actions that were, generated as part of the process, fine tune those, customize those, get those the way they need to be within their respective goal areas in order to then have something you can work with, for the coming year and do some planning out, as well. Not everything is happening in the first year, but, looking out 3 to 5 years, you have a chance to sort of do that. So we felt like what was captured here still represents, community input, which I think was what, for the integrity of the process, I think that's something we were looking at it through that lens to make sure that we felt like the community's fingerprints were still, in here, which I think they are, because I know we've been working with it a lot since the community saw it last. So anyway, I'll stop there and see if there's any questions or reactions, but we think it's come together nicely.
So taking what Sarah's first comment was on the ordering of the goals, we talked a little bit about that. We didn't talk a lot about that. Did anybody have a feeling either way on the ordering of the goals?
I did kind of make those intentional when we did some of the shifting, again, recognizing that when we look at, when we approach it, we start executing, it's not really going to matter the order.
Right.
But I think it does send a public signal of like our priority is kind of those functional governmental items. And then those additional items, are kind of, I don't say lower priority, but addition to those other.
I think it brings two things to my mind, and thank you, Mayor, for that. I think we need to make sure that in the preface of our document that ultimately is published to the public, there needs to be not a footnote, but a paragraph in there that these are not in any particular priority order or any particular order, et cetera. Yes, I think from just a vision, not a vision, but the way people look at it, they're going to see the first one as first, et cetera. There's a natural have to do that. So I guess, did anybody else have any thoughts along the current list as how they are ordered? The one comment Sarah made was that the attractive city was something that was high on the public's mind, correct, Sarah?
Yeah.
And that's the way you guys had it early on in the list of goals.
But I think one of the reasons we rearranged it and put, I think, safety's first now is because when the public saw it when it first came out, that was one of their major reactions that, we wanted this place to be safe, and it was barely mentioned because we thought it was kind of just maybe already taken care of. So I thought that was a reaction to public comment, unless I'm wrong.
No, in some ways it was, and when we looked back, we ended up adding or building out safe community a little bit further, talking about specific operational items, as well as then adding in that kind of standard governmental operations goal, or what was it, 7 or 8? I forget exactly where it's at now, but so we did kind of expand upon that as well, based off of the public feedback of, you guys are focused on all of these additional items and not just the functional, but that's kind of goes back to the fact that a strategic plan is not necessarily what your just daily business is, it's how you're going to set yourself apart. So I think we added that in there to make sure it continued to be a focus, but not necessarily losing those other items.
Yeah. And that makes sense, because I think it's right. I think we did hear quite a bit about the safety. And I think one comment that sticks out in my head that, and I'm not sure what phase of the process we heard this, but it's sort of like, if you don't have a safe community, then it doesn't matter what else, you can't have these other things because people, the perception or the realism of that is going to hinder you in so many other ways. So, I think that makes sense. And I agree with Jeff. I think I'll find a place that makes sense in the preface or sort of the opening overview to just say exactly that. They're not in a priority order, but there was an intentionality to the order that, put some of the more, I'll have to find a way to say it, but like how the mayor mentioned it, the sort of functional government items up front, and then some of the more, I guess, community-wide things in the, towards the back. So it doesn't indicate priority. It's just a simple way to kind of flow through the work. And the mayor's right. When you're implementing it, it doesn't matter, but it does. I think the public, when they review it, they're gonna, make an assumption if we don't tell them. So we might as well tell them up front kind of what our intentions are around that. So we can add that in. I'll find a spot for that.
Sarah?
Yeah.
My view on it is that each of the areas should be of equal importance. Certainly, there are people that'll look at them and prioritize things politically or personally or from the perspective of their business or how they operate their life. But as you're doing that preference, if all of them aren't of as equal importance, the ones that shouldn't be there. And I really it shouldn't. And so when you do that, whatever it's prefaced with should reflect that. All these, not that. Even with intentionality, the intentionality can belittle anything. And I'd be concerned that if that's worded wrong, it could create that impression.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think that's the goals are here because they were all important, right? Like that's what they in these goals and objectives, like, were organically developed from the input from the first round that we heard from folks. That's where we got to this, these essential goals. So yeah, I agree with you. I think we can make sure that's clear in that preface, and we can take it, we'll write that up and we can send it over and make sure we got it right in there. But I think it is important to say something, I think, to that point, just so people, like you said, people don't put their own lens on it, and they may do it, but at least we've stated what the intentionality was within the document.
Great.
Okay.
Other comments around that? Dennis?
Yeah, I've got a quick question. And it's not a criticism, it's more an inquiry from your perspective, Sarah, and I know these were ideas and vision statements from the community, but is there anything that is glaringly absent from your experience in dealing with other communities where you would say, oh my gosh, I am surprised you guys didn't put in there, save the monarch butterfly or whatever that was.
Yeah.
Feel like that.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I don't think so. I mean, I feel like the goals and objectives are, they're broad. They cover a lot of different aspects of community life. You all, I know early on, were very focused on, this is a plan for, the city of Findlay's government. This is your organizational plan, but you were open to, actions that suggest objectives that suggest partnering in order to get things done. You're already doing a lot of that in the city. And I think having that show through and continue to be illustrated through the plan, it's very evident. I think also this idea of being opportunistic, that you've put forth this framework, but that you're open to how things play out. Nobody can foresee all the things that are going to come down the pipeline, but this gives you a good, like when I look at it, I don't think of something coming down the pipeline that you wouldn't be able to sort of evaluate or slot in based on how you've structured this. So no, not at the framework level. I mean, obviously you're going to get down to the action level, and get to those specifics, but I think you've set yourself up in a way that you can, have a conversation around those when those come up. So I don't think there's anything really, I don't think there's anything really, missing.
How about if we take that the other way? In looking at this, I wondered if all your documents you put out in these communities is this cumbersome with the preliminary stuff. For example, just using one page as an example, the timeline process. It seems misplaced in this document. Several of the other pages seem misplaced. Almost the document, it seems overly thick for what we would want for the community to see. And that's just
Well,
my point of view. And is that, do you do
Yeah.
that in every city that you work with?
yeah, this is actually a leaner document, honestly, to be honest, than we typically do. But I think also like, so there's some choice in how this is developed, and we've done this a couple different ways. So it was, I don't know, it's sort of I think our initial or our sort of best practice to sort of lay out the framework, get to the vision and mission, but then make sure that process section, people can't always appreciate what's come out of it if they don't understand what went into it, right? So by laying out the process, by understanding that it was a very deliberate, intentional, community informed process that took, a year more now to kind of walk through it. And I think you want the public to really appreciate the intentionality and the thought that went into the process that you set up and that we help facilitate. And so that's that process section, I feel like lets people kind of appreciate all that went into it before they see the framework. Now, we've done some plans where we just get to it, you get to it a little quicker. So you move that plan framework kind of up, and then you have the process section almost not necessarily an appendix, but it does come last. Sometimes it is an appendix, but it comes sort of last in the document as sort of, if you want to read all this process stuff, you can, but it's sort of our, I guess our first recommendation that you sort of set up what people are going to see so they can appreciate the community input. They can appreciate the snapshot, the background information that was put in. But saying that, I mean, the way this is set up is that you can slip out any of these pages. I got it in front of me, like you can see what I'm doing, but like, this safe community one, you can slip that out as a one pager and take it and talk to somebody about it in the community or reference it somewhere. So I think the idea is, even though the document may be however many pages, 40 some pages long, I think you can take sections of it and sort of use it how you need it. So there's also the ability that if you all wanted to, after the fact, create sort of a brochure or something that that you wanted to have, like everything almost like a cheat sheet thing, that's something that you could do as well. But these are every bit of, this is, like I said, this is more of a leaner way. We tried to be really strategic, and also I think staying focused on what was most important as for background information so that people understood the effort that went into it.
Yeah, I guess I think it's good to lay it out, and I agree. I guess I saw this as, you need to have this to tell that initial story, but then we're probably going to have one page for each, you kind of have the one page for each goal, and we'll probably have a one sheet flyer that goes over them. I think that's kind of standard marketing material after you put something together, but I think we would do a disservice if we didn't kind of put everything together that came through and was a part of the discussion that got us to this point.
Yeah, I think I agree, Mayor, and I guess that was a good question, Jim, but you of all people have been punishingly, strident in keeping process in mind.
I like
And
that.
I think that's why it's a good idea to have this up front, because all the things that we did do and all the time that we did spend showing that we did our due diligence in this process.
I was more curious as to what was the norm with the clients you guys have. To me, I think there's too much, in my opinion, of the process in there. I think it's too cumbersome, because really by the time you get to the meat of the document, there's a lot of people, they're gonna skim through or flip through a lot of it. I don't know how we hope the document is reviewed by the people who have the interest. But in the end, I don't care if it's in an appendix, I don't care if it's in the front, I don't care if it needs to be useful. And from my first reading of it, when I got this, it just seemed very, very cumbersome. But that's my opinion. That's one person's opinion.
Well, I will say too that I think this is the sort of public facing piece. I think the mayor mentioned that before, like you have this that's the public, it's the one on your website that people can see. But then when you actually start working on it, again, you may spin off some marketing pieces like she mentioned, but when you start working on this, converting things into like the actions into some sort of Excel working Excel document or some other working document as you work through it, that's where you're not gonna work with this document. This is sort of your finalized plan. It's the one you can share, it's the one on your website. People can get a sense of what you're about in Findlay, what's important to you. It becomes the guide by which you, and you guys will use it as you refer back to it, hopefully, as you're making decisions and things. But eventually it will kind of become second nature because you'll know what you'll get so familiar with it, right? But I think spinning off some, working documents is really important. You've got to institutionalize and operationalize this plan. And it's not necessarily this document. This gets you everything in one spot that then you can work from and create working documents that support it, that are more internal, I guess, if that makes sense.
Well, and I think you just kind of made my point. Dennis made it earlier, when he saw it, he said it was 40-some pages. And so I'm not going to print it. I'm glad you printed it for me. You just said it's going to be the first thing the public sees. Public's not going to print this. It's too big. They don't have the money in their printers, and the average person might look at it. And the younger people are getting digital, so I wouldn't expect them to print it anyways. But
Yeah.
I think we've made our own point. If that's the intent, that's fine. But if we really want people to look at it and engage with it and bring it to a council meeting, I think it's too big. And again, it's not a criticism, it's an observation. So please don't take that as I'm telling you to change it. It's just for discussion.
So Jeff, since really we've already gone through all the goals and objectives, I guess, do we want to kind of talk, maybe have Sarah walk us through the implementation and some of that aspect of that?
I got, before you do that, on the third page or fourth page, you've listed the mayor and the city council. I'm not listed as an elected official, the city auditor should be. And do we want the other two or 4 elected officials on there as well, the treasurer, the law director, and the judges? I think that's important, and that they be listed in the same prominence.
Brian Bauman's not on city council either.
Yeah, we'll have a couple of department head changes as well. And one thing I wanted us to discuss was, at least, I'm trying to think if there was any other council members that previously served on this committee, but I think it might be nice to also note previous strategic plan committee member Tom Schindeldecker, because he was very engaged in the early years and discussions. So I don't know if there's other folks that it might be worth just mentioning.
Remember,
I don't think-
Amy Schindeldecker.
Just put it in. Yeah.
Go back. No.
Yeah, he was in the first year. But I think you just pull the old committee reports, and that's not a bad idea for your council members. I don't think you need to do it for the council members. No, it's not a bad idea at all.
Start under the previous mayor.
Well, and while you're talking about that, the other question I had is, some of the pictures are very dated. For example, I mean, this is a brand new strategic plan. It's 2023. We're going to roll it out the end of 2023 into 24. And we've got a picture where everybody's in 2017 t-shirts. And not knocking the event or what they're doing, just that
You have a page reference.
it would be the page after page 35, so I guess page 36. And there's some other photos in there that I think the group ought to give some thought to the photos after the pages and what we're putting here. There's been no discussion of that. But I don't know that some of the photos actually represent the intent of the pages before them, and I don't know if we want to self-date the document with a photo like that. Again, just an observation, not a criticism question.
And if you guys have other photos, I went through back old city files and then reached out to Convention and Visitors Bureau, because they take a lot of pictures at community events, and got a bunch of photos for them. So if there are events or organizations that you have photos from, please feel free to share them.
Well, now it's the other thing, like a couple of pages up front, we got the courthouse in there, and this is the city plan. Shouldn't that be the city building, that kind of thing? I think that's worth kind of a look-see and to focus it in on
Art.
the messaging that we want to deliver. I love the one of the group at Alexandria's. Those pictures are really nice in there and things like that. So there are some great stuff here, and the ones at the Marathon Performing Arts Center at your public meetings, but I think some of these others may not send the message we want.
I thought the same thing with the courthouse. I always loved that building, but for the city plan.
And that happens a lot. We end up with a courthouse on a lot of our city stuff. I think it's big enough. grown up enough. We don't need to-
It's kind
Yeah,
of
so if you want to
local
collect,
landmark.
Yeah.
if you wanna collect some additional newer photos, we can definitely swap out photos. We were working with what we kind of had in our, you know, what you had shared before, but if there's some updated ones, we'll definitely swap out photos. I think there's one of the city building that we used on one of the rack projects or something. We can swap that out for the county building.
One other thing, if I might, to accommodate my dad and my grandfather, they prefer to use Hellman with two N's. Since it's an old German name and there used to be a stickler for that. I don't know why, but
Are you saying you'd like your name spelled properly,
well,
Dennis?
yes.
So needy all the time.
That's
My
about me,
God.
but
Some people just can't be satisfied.
yeah.
So, Mayor, will you send us like, updates to this acknowledgements page then of the previous members? And if you want to insert the other, it seems like we should do it. Jim suggested insert the other elected officials and things here, so we can get that cleaned up, but we'll look for those additions.
Yep.
Okay.
Safe on the side,
No, I said he's not listed.
not listed. Oh. Okay, so that's. Paying.
Yes. All right, do we want to go through the implementation stuff or?
No. Sarah, were there any specific comments that you had about any of the goals?
I don't think so. I think they made sense. I could understand why things were sort of, you know, pulled out and redistributed. I mean, there wasn't really anything. There was a couple questions, Mayor, you sent through about like the ordering of things, but when we looked at it, we thought it made sense where you had it. So there weren't any, I think it's, you know, a good framework document that allow you to dig in and start working with it.
Okay, very good. Then yes, let's go through the process, which starts on what page, Mayor? Do you
I think
have
it's
it open?
42. I'm gonna share my screen so that it's visible to the public through the Zoom.
Okay. So do you want me to kind of walk through this, or do you all have any specific questions you want me to address, or how do you want to?
Why don't you walk through it for everybody?
Okay, okay.
How
So
Great, Sarah.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
But we're all smart people that can read on our own, so just high level from your standpoint.
Yes, okay, yeah. So I think the idea here generally through all of these different, if I was to summarize kind of these couple pages, it's about continued updating and transparency with the public. So, you know, providing a way that you can show progress and on this strategic plan and the elements in it to the public. You know, we recommend sort of an annual reporting out that could be done with an annual report. It could be handled with the mayor through an annual city address, say the city address, where you have a section that you're referencing the strategic plan. Some clients of ours have done specific kind of, you know, not parties exactly, but gatherings, you know, where we bring people out to sort of celebrate, you know, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, whatever the strategic plan and what's been accomplished. So I think that's important. That's one piece of it. I think that I mentioned this before, but institutionalizing and operationalizing this. So understanding, you know, as your different departments are working on, you know, staff plans or work programs, making presentations to council about new initiatives, that they are looking at this and illustrating how it might fit in, or it doesn't fit in. That's okay. But I think just being intentional and saying like this new, you know, initiative or this new program or this thing we're thinking about really helps reinforce goal, you know, whatever, objective, whatever. So trying to put those processes in place so that there's, you know, there's consideration of the plan when decisions are being made. I think the other piece of this is sort of, as the city of Findlay's put forth this, like to others, right? To the community, to community partners, within the community, that so that they are very clear, like, hey, here's the city's priorities, here's what we're focusing on in the next 5 years. And then hopefully there are some nice alignments or some synergies there, and some community organization or a private investor might say, oh, this is interesting. I see the city's really looking into this, and I'm looking to move in that space too. I'm going to reach out, so some of those kind of collaborations can come from this by just, again, you're illustrating what's important and what you're working on. Obviously, like capital improvement plans, other planning documents. When we did the Forward OP strategic plan back in, when was that? My gosh, 2018, I guess. Maybe we wrapped it up in 2019. Can't even remember now. It's been a few years, but they still reference that. It's like in their, they're aligning with the vision. We're helping them with the comprehensive plan process now. And they're basically saying our comp plan needs to be in support of our strategic plan. So the strategic plan sort of sits up here, and every other thing needs to kind of support that. So I guess just thinking about that as you have other departments doing different plans or studies, that they're kind of referencing the strategic plan is important. And then I think just the ongoing review, I think it sounds like from my call with the mayor and Jeff a few weeks ago, that you all have a process by which to sort of ongoing develop, the actions, but the plan management cycle, just kind of like every, 5 years, so you're going to maybe look back at this and need to do some updating. It doesn't mean you issue an RFP and get a consultant involved. It just means you're taking stock of kind of where things are potentially and deciding if there's needs to be some adjustments, but that it's a living, breathing document. So things can, you again, it's a framework, so you want to be able to work within it, but you don't want to be changing it all the time, because then there's no point in having a plan, because you're still doing at your whim, kind of thing. So I think, but there is a deliberate moment where you're kind of looking at it and reviewing it. So I think those are sort of the, managing, updating it, making sure that you're, I think the community that came out, we had good engagement, and, I think you honor that time and commitment by the community by giving them, updates. Some folks, and these are bigger places, but, they even put some sort of dashboard on their website where they can have all the initiatives, they can show where they're making progress on them. I don't know that you need to go to that extreme, but I think some way for people to see the progress once a year in some sort of report or event is important. So I'll pause there, see if there's any questions.
Sarah, for the training that I go to for fiscal officers, when we're looking at capital planning, budget cycles, the largest emphasis with regard to strategic planning that comes out of those best practices is the process by which the community engages and gets input into those annual budgets.
Okay. Yep.
And I envisioned, rather than just a generic statement that the community members should be encouraged to go to certain council committees, shouldn't this, I viewed this as more as implementation and improvement, or implementation and continued community engagement. Isn't this the place where we should address that in a little bit more detail? So like today, the biggest weakness of the city when it comes to communication with the community is they don't feel they have access to the elected officials and their processes for change or implementing ideas. Wouldn't this be a great place to say to the community, and this is how you engage your elected officials that have developed these goals and are advancing these goals, and this is a flow chart of the process by which you do that?
Yeah, if that's been developed, I mean, if there's a process that you all want to use, I mean, we can definitely include that. I think we alluded to that here, but kept it kind of general, but I think that's important. I know a lot of communities are moving towards the participatory budgeting sort of process to really engage folks along that. And, there's definitely, I think, room for that here. But I think that's up to you all. And if you want to put that much detail in the strategic plan, again, it's a framework. And I think it's setting up you all taking some of these and digging into them more and developing processes and developing approaches and whatnot that are generally in supportive of this, if that makes sense.
So one of the things, I think it is maybe worth, just adding a section in here, like if you have specific ideas related to the strategic plan or the city, putting something like, we can keep that strategic planning email address or things like that. But I do think that one of our specific action items is related to communication and community engagement. And I think that we need to address it for sure, because there's no reason that people shouldn't feel comfortable approaching us in whatever manner, reaching out to a community or showing up, or I get lots of emails for different things. But I see it more as like, I think we could create, I think maybe Jacqueline and I had talked a little bit about, just creating a specific area on our website and, on those things that it's, have an idea, share it with us, and it can go to all of you, or but depending on what it is, a certain committee, because really all it would need to do is have two of you say, yeah, we're interested in discussing that at a committee, and it goes to committee. So I feel like there's an opportunity to create a, or even a form that people submit to say, I'd like council to consider this. And, maybe it has a, kind of cover page that says, here are specific strategies of the city of Findlay or goals, please identify which goal you believe this fits under, or if it doesn't, please explain why. So I guess I feel like that's something that needs more conversation. I think we can add kind of a general statement in this document, but then I think that's, a specific goal action that's going to come out of this, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and one thing on that, Mayor, oftentimes we do have, and we don't have it here, but on the acknowledgements page or the inside cover, we would actually have like a contact, whether that's you or Jeff or somebody else in the city, but somebody, a name and an email to, if you have questions about this document, or if you have questions about the strategic plan, you can reach out here. So again, it doesn't become sort of a faceless document, if you will. So if we want to add something, or if we want to include that email address or whatever, we can add that to the community engagement paragraph as well. But we oftentimes do have sort of a name and a face to this for specific questions. So if you want to add that, we can do that.
With it being a council's strategic planning committee, the council supposedly adopted plan when we're done, wouldn't the council clerk be the appropriate vetting point for that? No, it's an idea, or the community member comes to council clerk, and the council clerk says, you probably need to talk to Chairman Wobser at strategic planning, you probably need to talk to Chairman Russell at zoning and that type of thing. The council clerk would see the best place and the most neutral individual to vet those ideas into the council's process. And that could be included here. In other words, that would be my view of it. I don't know what council's pleasure is, but it would make the most sense from my perspective.
Sarah, I would really be interested to hear what you see as best practices, because we seem to be best practice oriented with Manhattan and Overland Park and other organizations, the group in Tennessee. That and how have they handled it? Because when you presented to us to get this business a while, whatever years ago, the implementation and the giant wheel and that part of it was really what, in my eyes, would set you above and beyond all the other people who presented. And so that's the expertise that we're looking for that I'm looking for versus what we think. I want your input on that and how we implement this and how we communicate this. And, I'm on Overland Park's website as we speak and was going to go over to Manhattan, Kansas, but that's the expertise that I wanted you to bring to the table and
Yeah, no, I think that, no, it's a good point. I mean, implementation is where is the whole purpose, right? We want this plan to be implemented. We don't just do it to do it, and we don't want it to be put on a shelf. So I think it goes back to the oh my gosh, I'm having trouble speaking. The operational and the institutionalizing of the plan, right? And how you can start to take this and infuse it into the systems and processes that you already have. So when we're just talking about the council clerk, that seems like a good way to communicate on just that one piece of it, right? That folks call in or they send an email, they've got a way to say, hey, I've got an idea, or I've got something that I'd want to share about that. Then that person knows which committee's working on which things and can kind of slot them appropriately, right? There needs to be a way in. People need to understand that it's not a fortress, that they can access, right, and get in. The wheel piece was really about understanding sort of your workflow, which I think, understanding now how you're taking it into council committees. This plan did not in all honesty, end up where we thought it would be, because we thought we'd have actions included. But given where you are and your need to sort of continue to work through this, which we fully appreciate, this did not sort of land in a full strategic plan, which is why we've named it a framework. So we dropped out that sort of wheel graphic, but I think you're right, Grant, like we still have to, that still has to be sort of captured. And I think that's what we were trying to get in maybe the section on plan management cycle, but understanding like when you're doing budgeting that you're considering the strategic plan, when you're thinking about CIP, you're aligning with the strategic plan, when you're doing other planning processes, you're trying to keep everything kind of, the strategic plan is sort of the North Star. So, we didn't kind of get to the wheel piece because I know you're still working through this. And it sounded like the committee structure might be the way in which you continually almost on an annual basis, look for reevaluate actions, which ones have been completed, which ones have stalled and for what reasons, what new actions might need to be included because there's been an opportunity or something shifted in the community. And so there needs to be more of an emphasis or something needs to be brought up. So it is a way to, I think, to do all those things. And I can, I'm interested in, I know what Overland Parks, kind of done with their plan, how they've sort of institutionalized it into their, into their different processes and how it has become sort of, hey, if you want to engage, you sort of have to, not have to, but we're looking for alignment within the strategic plan, right? On a number of different partners or now they're doing their comprehensive plan, it's going to align. I am curious about Franklin, and I can follow up with Jamie and then maybe get back with you on that, Grant, because they are like 20 years. Now they've evolved. They've done multiple updates to their plan. And they've even spun off a nonprofit that has become this sort of neutral convener in the community to be community engagement, to be that place to have the hard conversations and to hash out things. But it's much bigger. It's much bigger. Franklin Tomorrow is much bigger than just City Hall. Overland Park was bigger than City Hall. That was a community-wide, that was a partnership between the city, their visitors bureau, and their chamber. So it was a little bit different of a, framing from the beginning. But, I think that, again, these are not cookie cutter, right? They've got to work for each community, and each community is different. And so, again, we're trying to give you some, through the page 42 and 43, some of the things to consider and things to work out. And then you'll have to figure out how that kind of works in with your specific processes within the city of Findlay. Now, I can talk to Jamie and get a little bit, like I am interested about, Franklin and some of those other ones that he was a part of that I am less familiar with that have a little more longevity. And I can kind of follow up with you. But I think the biggest thing is just being able to institutionalize it and making sure that somebody every day is waking up and thinking about this plan, right? The Findlay Forward plan. And whether that means you've always got it referenced when you're doing council agendas and there's certain items you're looking at. If it's when your staff is doing a staff report and they're referencing it, I mean, that's how you move it forward. You have to continue to work at it, right? And you continue to bring it into the folds. When you're doing the budgeting, I mean, we've had places where they've completely realigned their budget to the areas of the plan, right? They don't have the budget buckets the same way. They completely realign it. And that's they wanted to make sure that they were really intentional about that. Now that's not everywhere, but that was a couple places that did that. And they wanted to make sure that there was that alignment there so they could see to see how that was reinforcing each other. If you don't align complete buckets of how you're organizing the budget, then I think there still is a line back, right? You're looking at the budget items and you're understanding which parts of the plan they're supporting. So anyway, again, it's a framework. You're going to have to sort of work it and use it in the different ways that make sense in Findlay for your existing processes, or use it to develop some new processes, like, inviting the public to, comment on a website. I think that's a great idea. Have a portal that people can always give feedback to the city. and how that gets, you just gotta, if you're asking for that input, you just have to make sure that someone's looking at it and being authentic with it. Or inviting people into these council committees to share their ideas and whatnot. But I think that's a great idea. And honestly, and a lot of the plans that we've done, there hasn't been sort of an intentional, ongoing, I guess, engagement way for people to bring those actions or bring those ideas into us. I think that's really a great thing that you're adding in here. A lot of it is a lot more about, the transparency and reporting out on how they're doing. But this idea of the ongoing engagement with the community to bring forth ideas and considerations, I think is really great and not something we've necessarily seen other places.
Well, it's interesting, Sarah, as part of their normal council process now, in the meetings, they get letters or reports, and the council president referred to this committee, referred to that committee. I would think it would be neat, and again, it's I'm not asking them to do this, but I say it for the point of discussion that if that, whether it be a website or a combination of website and written comments to a particular place, that once a month, and it's not going to happen once a month, but as those come in, it's in that format, and then the council meeting, they say, and here's a report of the ideas from the community that people have requested be reviewed, and the council president would say referred to X committee, strategic planning committee for distribution, or refer to strategic planning committee for review. That would be really neat, and it would show the public that there truly is responsiveness to their engagement.
Yeah, no, and I think that there's, back to the mayor's point, there's a whole communication piece to this plan, the strategy that will get detailed out, that I think that can fold into, because I think you're going to want to make sure you're communicating out broadly that, everyone has access to this and everyone can make their voice heard. And, it's sort of it might be a culture shift a little bit if they're not used to that, and so it'll take a little bit of time to sort of get that communication out there and sort of get that process in place. But I think that's a really good goal to strive for.
So in terms of like pictures and things like that, how does the group want to look at, I guess, some of the suggestions? You guys want to bring stuff to the next meeting? What do you want us to do, Jeff, in terms of taking this draft document and saying, hey, you got to rethink this one or that one, or what's the best way to approach this?
First off, I've got those written down as two things that we need to work on, the acknowledgements page and the pictures. We can talk about those. Sarah has a hard stop at 5:00. So we've got her for another 7 minutes. So I thought if there were any additional questions that anybody had for Sarah while she was with us, that we could address those first, Jim. And then we can come back to that once Sarah has to go, because that's something we can deal with internally. Sarah, was it your thought, you've labeled this as a strategic plan framework? Is your thought that we would publish it with just the goals and objectives, or do we wait for the full, having all the itemized, or not objectives, what comes after
Action
objectives?
items.
Action items, thank you.
Yeah.
Today, sorry. What was your thought there?
Well, I mean, ideally, I think it has the actions, but I don't know, my understanding, and maybe I'm not understanding the timing fully, but this going into council committees to sort of work through this, that sounded like a process to me. So again, in the transparency for the public, I think you could publish this, and it could, it says framework there. And if we need to put a little thing in the front or on the front cover about what that means, we can, and say that we've got it in here, but I think we could pull it forward a little bit more about, actions are forthcoming, that they're being worked on. But, ultimately you do want to get to the, reveal what the specific actions are that you're going to work on underneath these objectives. But this gives people a lot to look through, right? Like, it's them they can appreciate the process if they weren't a part of it, or if they want to be reminded, they can understand the high level, the vision, the values, the goals, and the objectives. And then I think, you can issue a new one when an updated one when the actions come out.
Sarah, my question would be with past customers, when you roll a document like this out, and if we do it that way, if we roll this one out, and actions are forthcoming, but we have a relatively complete initial document, which is nice looking. What kind of, do you expect feedback from the community, or do you expect it just to kind of be idle and become part of our process? Do you normally get feedback?
Well, we've already gotten feedback through, I mean, it's changed some, so I mean, you could put it back out, but typically when we get to this point, we've already shared this with the public and they've given their input, right? So I think that's up to you all. If you feel like you want to do another, public comment period, given that there were some changes and revisions and things and refinements from the version that they would have seen as part of the process, back in this, when was it? Fall, I guess.
I'm not suggesting
September.
that. I'm more suggesting that, or asking, I guess, so this goes out, do you see any problem? Do you see this being a negative that it goes out? Is there a downside to saying, hey, here's a hard stop for us to get this document out to the public? This is the framework for where we're going, and now we're going to flush this out as we move forward. Do you see a negative to that?
No, I don't. As long as you're clear about what this is and that more is coming, I don't see it as a negative. I think it's could be more problematic to let more time go by, and people are like, what happened to, Findlay Forward? What happened to my ideas? What happened to, you know what I mean? So I think in the spirit of transparency and keeping up the momentum, which, again, has been sort of stretched out a little more than typical, I think you kind of owe it back to the public to share something back. So I think I think they would appreciate that. Again, just we're clear what this is, and that more is forthcoming.
So realistically, if we reviewed those individual pages, when change the pictures, we could realistically have something out ready to go, formalized and grammar checked and perfect and pristine by the end of the month.
Yeah, I think so. From our perspective, yeah, if you all can get us the acknowledgements and the photos, and we can, yep. And if everyone I'm assuming you all are taking a close review of it as well, and we'll need some consolidated comments back to us to pick up in the document. But yeah, I think we can do that.
Does anybody see a downside to taking that approach?
I thought that's what our approach has been for the last 3 months, that was kind of where we landed, that we were going to roll out this framework, put it out, through adoption, through council, with the statement in there that we're going to then go back and start evaluating all the action items. And, then action items can be adopted into the framework, as council committees recommend they're adopted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that is a point where I think you can have on the, the council agendas every, I don't know if it's every council meeting, but you've got a place where you're talking about the strategic plan, especially if you're doing some ongoing work on it, where there's a chance to touch base and share out. This is where we are. We're reviewing, we reviewed these, this goal areas actions, and they're being up for adoption. It can be more of a rolling piece if that's what it needs to be. And that's what it sounded like to me when we were talking earlier. But this would be a good point to put a bow on it for the public, I think, at this point, to give them a chance to have a look at where it's come.
Well, it looked to me from the way you had it laid out that it's appropriate. And I would think, based on our form of government, the letter should come from either the council president or the strategic planning committee chair as a whole, and acknowledging the other elected officials and everything else, and move it out. And I would be for that, provided we don't release any more drafts until this committee's happy with the final draft. Got no problem with that.
Very good. Sarah, it is 5:00.
Yep.
Any other final words from you, or comments, questions for Sarah before we let her go?
So when would you like the pages by? Ideally, if we were going to push for the end of the month, when do you need the changes by?
If I could get, if I could get everything by like Wednesday, the 21st, or Thursday, the 22nd, the latest. That would give us that next week to get everything incorporated. We did one of our, senior folks did a QA/QC on this document for like, grammar and punctuation stuff, but we'll go through another iteration. But yeah, I think if we can have at least, like 5, 6 working days, 7 working days, that would be good to get it all incorporated. If you send stuff as, you send the photos and the acknowledgement page, we can work on it. But if we're incorporating other edits, we want to make sure we have time to review those and incorporate them. And there may be some back and forth, like we might have a question about what something means, or whatever. So just having time to sort of review the edits and go back and forth. I think if we could shoot for like the 21st, that would be good.
As part of that process, Sarah, do you have a specialist in your firm who is familiar with the dynamic with all the wokeness and all the changes in our society and our culture, to make sure we've got some odd comments here and there, and odd as in random comments regarding certain words here and there that were considered maybe offensive, potentially offensive. We even changed some words ourselves in the committee just to make sure there are no words going out that in the objectives that a thought that we did not intend. Do you have some?
Yeah, we can take a review for that. Yeah. There's also a Hemingway app. We actually just came about it more recently. And we can take sections of the text and kind of run it through that. But it's a chance to make sure things are at a certain reading level. Some communities we work at, they want everything on like an 8th grade or even 5th grade reading level. I'm not sure that's been, you all haven't really necessarily brought that up here, but like, we want to make sure things is consistent and, it kind of looks for issues and things. So we can run it through that. We can also make sure when we do our final review of it, that we're paying attention to that point. We try to be sensitive to that ourselves as we're writing things, but we can be, kind of go through that with that viewpoint to make sure that we're being, sensitive to that.
And Sarah, you mentioned QA/QC. That's your quality assessment.
Well, quality assurance, quality control. Yeah, that's a borrowed term from my years in architecture. But when you look through a set of drawings to make sure they're good before they go for construction, it's QA/QC. But it's basically our own internal review by somebody who's not familiar. It wasn't Shelby or I doing it. It was another senior folk in our office so that they can sort of, again, it's easy to look over stuff when you look at it all the time. But somebody who's not familiar to kind of review it for general flow and, grammar and typos and that kind of thing.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to make sure I knew what you were saying.
Yep.
Very good. Anything else for Sarah? Sarah, anything else from you?
No, I'll wait to get some of the stuff and we'll clean it up. And Grant, I will follow up on the implementation piece a little bit more with Jamie to see if he has anything else he can add there, because I really, we do want to, we feel strongly that we want to set you all up for implementation in a good way. So if there's something we can help in that way more, we'll try to do what we can. But it is important to us that you're able to utilize this, you're able to, work on it. It's again, it's not a static document. It's something that you're going to work at and institutionalize and all those things. But whatever we can do to help you on that, we can try to double down on that a little bit for you.
Sarah, to that end, as you guys are having that discussion, if some of those documents or graphics or templates are things that we would be able to utilize, and then as we work through the process, can update those graphics, I'd just be interested in if we have that access, that would be awesome. And two, if so, what design, or system they're in, because I know we do have access to some design software.
Okay, yeah, most everything we do is in InDesign. So if you have access to that, this final document, we're not there, and we know we're handing this off at some point, but like we can give you we had the implementation matrix actually created for when we had the original draft actions, but like we can provide some of those resources and tools as a template, and then when you get there you can plug stuff in and update it. But yeah, we can there's several things that I think we can send you that are blank or examples or templates that you can use. Yeah,
because obviously we want all the files in fashion for the future.
Yep. Yeah, and then when we package this up, we will package up it as a InDesign packaged file. So you'll have all the, fonts, all the images, everything in there so you can edit it as
Perfect.
well going forward. Yep. Okay. All right, that sounds good.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you all. Good to be with you, and we'll be in touch.
All right,
Thanks,
Sarah. Thank you for joining us.
So it would be then probably our group's goal if everybody could get all of their comments to us by like maybe the 16th, and we can compile them and send them out to everybody for the 20th. Hopefully finalize something on the 20th to send to her on the 21st. All of our comments and edits.
Correct.
And then our next meeting won't be until July 5th because of the holiday.
Anybody else have any issues with that timeline?
So the 20th of council meeting,
Yes. 2 weeks.
do you need that in the motion?
Actually, I think that's going to be our
Committee report.
committee report. That'll be there.
Yeah.
I think that's our main, and I'll add in, I'm not even going to put in, I mean, we know we need to go through and look at revisions and suggest those and get those back.
You want that to come to you directly? Or
Uh,
Jacqueline or the mayor?
It doesn't matter, just
Well,
send it to the committee. That way everybody sees everybody's additions or subtractions, whatever they may be.
Right.
And revisions, just send to the committee. That way the mayor and I and Jacqueline all get them.
And so you guys know, I didn't think any of those pictures were bad. I just, like a couple of them caught me, like the one with the 2017, it just kind of caught me that it dates the document.
No, Jim, you make a good point. That stuff with the courthouse. I like the courthouse too, but
And I think great
Make a
pictures.
comment on that.
sure, Randy.
Okay. I agree with Jim on the fact that 43 pages is probably going to be more than what people are going to sit home and print off their computer. And in going through, I noticed that 15 of those 43 pages are nothing but a full page picture. Some of which are nice and some of which we may not need it. And some of the pages are condensed down and included with some of the print. So if you could find a space where you could take one of those full-size pictures, put it into the smaller, you might be able to cut it down to 30 pages, 32 pages.
You make a good point, Randy, but I think ultimately this document was originally meant to be printed in a printed format.
As like a pamphlet that we
Right.
have pictures that you want people to look at, I
Right.
thought.
Which is fine if you're gonna do it that way, but like I said, to expect somebody to, I wouldn't sit there and print off 43 pages.
I understand that. And the rest of my comment is, I think we can produce a PDF that just has the basic text to it,
Okay.
which would then be your 20 pages and maybe you would or would not print them up.
Yeah.
And if you print on both sides, Randy, it's only 10.
Yeah, I think we're definitely gonna have different formats of this, right? When you're putting together a communication package or plan package, you're gonna have your kind of robust annual report. Think of this as the nice board packet that looks real nice, and then we're gonna condense it to an executive summary, and we're gonna condense it down to graphics that we can share regularly on social media and all those different aspects. But yeah, we don't expect people to print this off necessarily, but we gotta also tell the full story and,
Right.
because if we give that really short version, you know what else is gonna be said? Well, you spent $125,000 on this and you only got 5 pages. So we wanna make
Then
sure.
there's those 33. So
I
we work
understand
with
that.
both.
I understand that.
Yeah, so making sure that we're balancing that.
Right. Okay, with that then, my document is,
You could do that committee report now.
yeah, all right.
Hey, one quick question, Jim. Did you put on here that you didn't attend the
No.
May 16th?
That document wasn't signed. In other words, we had one, it was lost, right?
Oh, God, you're just saying that this wasn't signed, so it just needs to change this date?
It's just, I signed that one, I just didn't sign this one.
Sounds good.
Okay,
I intended. Just didn't sign it.
okay. Yeah, I just couldn't read. It looked like you didn't say attend, so I just was clarifying.
No big-
All right, so with the, can we have a motion then for our committee report to, we're ready to sign? I would make a motion that the committee report reads something to the effect of that the committee will have revisions to the draft strategic plan framework emailed back to everyone by the 16th of June for processing, and then we will be ready to discuss all of those proposed changes on the meeting at 4 o'clock on the 20th, so that we are able to get those approved and sent to planning next by the 21st or 22nd, meeting Sarah's timeline.
Second that motion.
Motion and second, discussion.
I just want you to repeat the motion.
Something like.
Something like,
Everything,
that was the salient term, Jim, thank you. I gotta
Saved
find
by
this
the word.
stupid thing that's in here.
The only other thing I would, while you're doing that, is I would propose that our meetings be in here moving forward. I think that this is more conducive for conversation and being able to record it and have everybody on it, rather than when we're in there, we don't have somebody flipping back and forth, so some folks are not easily heard or seen.
I have no problem with that. We always have room for other folks if they want to come
Yeah,
in.
and if a bunch of people show up, we can always go in there,
I
but
think I'm
I
gonna
think this
take
works
it
a little
and
better.
change where I sit so I can see the rest of the committee members.
I'd rather be upstairs if you get that fixed.
Oh, yeah. At least for next meeting, probably still down here. I'm not sure if our furniture will be in yet, but if not, we can, our technology up connected. But yes, we can
Very
move up
good.
there once we're done.
Very good. Any other discussion? All those in favor of the proposed motion as it will stand when I write it out and give it to you, please signify by saying aye. All those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Any other discussion before we close the meeting? Very
Making
good.
progress.
It's
Good work,
5:10.
team.
That was very nicely done. Thank you very much. And we'll see you in 45 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.